We're going to talk about the subjunctive mood. This will be part one. In part two, we'll talk about infinitives and imperatives. So for the subjunctive, we're going to review the rules for forming the subjunctive and then talk about the meaning of subjunctive verbs. We'll work an example or two, but we'll wait until we've covered the infinitive and the imperative to work some more detailed examples. Subjunctive mood is the mood of probability or possibility. In English, it's disappearing. So we might say, if I were to do something, but today we normally just say, if I was. In Latin and Romance languages like French and Spanish, the subjunctive is used a lot more than in English. In Greek, it's used quite a bit. Unlike the indicative, the subjunctive has no time sense in itself. So time is derived from context. The aspect is key to determining the meaning. So whether it's imperfective, perfective, the aspect is key. Translating the subjunctive depends a lot on context. It is often used with subordinating conjunctions like hina in order that, hosta so that, and on if or when. Now here's an example from John 6:29, hina pistueta. So this is in the verse that says, this is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent. And the Greek puts it as, in order that you believe in him whom he has sent. And so we have hina pistueta, in order that you believe, or in order that you may believe in him whom he has sent. Forming the present subjunctive, we use the present tense stem. We use a lengthened connecting vowel. So instead of omicron and epsilon, which we see in the indicative, we have omega and eta. And then we use primary endings. So let's look at some examples here. For luo, notice that this is the same as the present active indicative, because in present active indicative, the omicron lengthens. So this is just an overlap, but it's not a big deal. Then for the second singular, we have lues, and so the connecting vowel is eta rather than epsilon. For the third singular, we have lue, and we can note that this is also the aorist middle subjunctive second singular, and it's also the present middle passive indicative second singular. But context will usually tell us what's going on. The first plural is luomen, as opposed to luamen in the present active indicative. Then we have lueta. So again, we have that lengthened connecting vowel. And then third plural, luosin. So the main thing to deal with here is this lengthened connecting vowel. The present middle passive subjunctive is similar. With a connecting vowel lengthened, we get luomai, lue, luetai, luomatha, luestha, and luontai. And again, we noted that this form here, lue, is the same as the third singular in the present active subjunctive. Now we also have aorist subjunctives, and these have the aorist tense stem with no augment, the tense formative, which is only for first aorist. For the active and middle, the tense formative is a sigma, and for the passive, it's a theta. And then we also have the lengthened connecting vowel. Those would be the same as the present tense. And we use primary endings. So aorist indicative uses secondary endings, but the aorist subjunctive uses primary endings, the same as the present tense. So what does that look like? The aorist active subjunctive, again, has that sigma tense formative in the first aorist. The second aorist uses the second aorist stem, and so it ends up looking a lot like the present subjunctive. We see those then tense formatives carried on down. Notice that luce, the aorist active third singular, is going to have an overlap with the middle second singular, just as we saw with the presents. So just we have this overlap occasionally. Context will tell us what the actual form needs to be. And then we have the plural forms with the same tense formative. So lusomen, luseta, lusosen. And similarly, the second aorist stem carries on all the way down, but there's no tense formative. The aorist middle subjunctive, very similar. We just have the lengthened connecting vowel. And so we track them down. We've got the sigma. Here's the overlap we have with the active third singular. And then we come on down. Everything else is fairly predictable. The endings are what we'd expect with the lengthened connecting vowel and then the endings. The only funky one here is, as often happens, the second singular, where the sigma drops out and then we have contraction with the other letters. Finally, the aorist passive. As with the aorist passive indicative, there are some things to pay attention to. So for the aorist passive subjunctive, we have this theta tense formative for the first aorist. The second aorist does not have a tense formative, so we need to look at the second aorist stem and then at the endings. So as we come down, we see lutho, luthase, luthe, luthomen, lutheta, luthosen. Note that we are using primary active endings here. And then notice for the second aorist, this looks a lot like the second aorist active, but note the circumflex, and the accent is different. Second aorist active is phono with no circumflex. Second aorist passive is phono with a circumflex. So the endings look similar, but the accent and the circumflex change. Let's look at some examples of the subjunctive verbs. So we have theleta. This is a present active subjunctive, second person plural, from thelo, to wish or to want. So we might say, it depends on context. Translation depends on context. So we might say, you may wish, if you wish, I will do something along those lines. Graphetai. This is a present middle passive subjunctive, third singular. This shows up in the indicative a lot in the passive. It is written. In the subjunctive, this would be more like that it may be written, something along those lines, or if it were written. Ekbalosin. So here we have a second aorist. It's an aorist active subjunctive, third plural from ekbalo. With a hina clause, it would be something like, in order that they cast out. Here we have aitesontai. And so this is a middle subjunctive, and it comes from aiteo, to ask, something along the lines of, they may ask. And then we have plerotho. This is an aorist passive subjunctive. Notice the theta, and then the ending has this circumflex on it, from plerao. Meaning depends on context, but something like, in order that I may be filled, or in order that I be filled. Here's an example of an aorist passive from a second aorist. So hupotage, so it's a subjunctive third singular, and hupotasso means to subject. So translation depends on context. If it came after a that or in order that he be subjected, or in order that he may be subjected, something like that. Here's an example from Matthew 1:22. So we have tuta de halan geganen, hina, and there's our hina, and a subjunctive that's after it, which I've colored differently. Hina plerothe ta hrethen hupa kuriu dia tu prophetu legantas. And so we have and this, we got the English translation, and this all, halon, happened, geganen, there's a nice perfect from ginomai, hina, in order that plerothe. This is an aorist passive subjunctive, third singular, from plerao, to fill or to fulfill. So here it would be something like would be fulfilled, might be fulfilled. And then we're looking for something to be fulfilled here, tahrethen. So in order that something may be fulfilled, in this case it's a neuter, tahrethen, the saying might be fulfilled, hupa kuriou, by the Lord, dia tu prophetu, through the prophet, legantas, saying, the verse that's actually being quoted from Isaiah comes in the next verse of Matthew. All of this happened in order that the word would be fulfilled or might be fulfilled. So here's an example of an aorist passive that is being used in the subjunctive sense of in order that something might happen.